Good day, John. Welcome to the Colt podcast series. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you here with us to share your experience and insight with our audience.
Yeah, thanks for being invited. Pleased to have this conversation with you, and I hope we're going to have some fun in the next hour or so.
Excellent. So let's get straight into it. So the subject of today's discussion and session is of great interest to many of our customers, and it is, of course, on the subject of SASE. And in particular, we'll be focusing on some of the key advice that we can share with the audience who might be contemplating going on their own SASE journey. So first of all, I'd just like to ask you from a Versa perspective, what are you seeing in the market regarding SASE adoption? What are some of the major trends that you're seeing firsthand with some of your customers?
Yeah, no, SASE adoption is really happening there, right? So where maybe a year ago we still had to explain what it was, nowadays, customers knows it, right? So they come straight to the point. One of the big trends that we see is customers are asking for single vendor SASE, right? We call that with Versa unified SASE. They really realize that single vendor SASE is helping them in reducing complexity and helping them to easier, achieve their goals for market. Single vendor SASE comes with a lot of different ingredients. ZTNA is typically one of the low hanging fruit that the customers are looking into, how to reduce the blast radius, right? So give the users only access to the resources they are supposed to have access to and nothing else, just to try to minimize in case the networks get infected, infiltrated, that the impact of that is minimal. Of course, we see cloud adoption continue to evolve, very relevant to SASE. Now the users are working from home. The applications are no longer in the private data center, but in the cloud. SASE provides a great framework to basically counter this.
Excellent. And we're seeing also here at Colt, many of our customers over, say, the past 5-6 years that started on this journey with SD-WAN are now starting to explore, what's next for them. How do they unify their networking and security? Perhaps, share some of your thoughts about customers that perhaps have already started on their journey. Perhaps they've already deployed SD-WAN over the last few years, and now they're starting to think more deeply about the security architecture and posture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, the first myth is that, SASE or cloud security will replace whatever is the existing, on-prem security. To some extent is true, but we believe that there is always place for on-prem security. I just mentioned ZTNA. ZTNA to a big extent is being delivered from on-prem security, right? So cloud adoption is definitely, or cloud security is definitely one of the ingredients of the trends that we see to become more protected against everything bad that comes from internet. But it's not the only part of the solution, right? East-west security typically is still being addressed through on-prem security. So that will probably still remain. And together with a zero-touch network access philosophy, on-prem security and cloud security gives you the best coverage. We also believe that it's not a greenfield anymore out there, right? So every customer has already something. So we need to evolve from there, and it probably doesn't happen, overnight. So typically migrations are always, evolution plans. What to do first, what next, and to come to a fully covered architecture through whatever the SASE framework defines.
We're seeing with a lot of the analyst predictions who are talking about this explosive growth in single vendor SASE. But why is a single vendor strategy being chosen by customers, do you think? What are the challenges facing them that are driving them to think about single vendor SASE solution? And are there any particular use cases or customer segments that are really adapted and suited for single vendor SASE?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important achievements that customers can achieve from single vendor SASE in particular is the fact that it reduces complexity. The reality is that SASE as a topic, or cybersecurity in general, or networking in general, is already complex by itself. So addressing that complexity with multiple different vendors is certainly doable, but it requires a lot of competence and knowledge from all those different vendors. Every vendor has its own ways of doing things. Typically, it brings its own data lake, so you get logging from various components of the solution scattered into different databases. Single vendor SASE definitely addresses a lot of those issues. Right, there is typically a single pane of glass for management of all the different components of networking and security, on-prem security and cloud-based security, and even security towards SaaS or infrastructure as a services solution. So single vendor SASE definitely ticks all those boxes. Furthermore, be mindful that there are different flavors of single vendor SASE, right? Vendors that claim that they have a single vendor strategy, but they basically have a bunch of technology acquired from different inheriteds bolted on together. That from a distance may tick the boxes, but it does not necessarily mean that's a single vendor strategy. Well, it is a single vendor strategy, but not from an homegrown, single product stack solution. So we believe that that could possibly one of the pitfalls that customers can step into. And we believe with Versa Networks, we developed everything in house. We have a very good coverage of that.
Excellent. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of customers that we're engaging with, it's all about ease of management, simplification of their estate. And I think that really plays to the strengths of a single unified SASE solution. And of course, maybe also just to think about the wider impact beyond technology within the organization. If we think about upskilling, perhaps of resources and technical specialists within the organization, there's obviously some synergies and ease there when it comes to ongoing management as well as deployment with a single vendor solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do agree.
So many of our audience, as I mentioned, are perhaps already starting their journey or about to start their journey. Perhaps they're in the research and evaluation phase, thinking about SASE, what it means for them. Is it the right architecture, perhaps? So, I mean, perhaps share some of your insights, some of your experience. What do you advise customers to think about at this early stage? What are some of those common barriers to a successful SASE implementation?
Yeah, good question. The risk of change, right? So I got something that works today, why should I change, right? Or, I don't want to change because, if this change is going to fail, then, I can be made accountable for that. So, human barriers are typically the biggest, factors for onboarding SASE strategies. However, we see, also when the market is being more and more proven that this can be done, that is successful, that the technology is mature, we see more and more that those barriers will fade away for all the right reasons. If those barriers are still exist, it's often like the networking team versus the security team. I guess you recognize that. That's probably in the industry already for a long time, but also those are more and more merging together. So, I feel that the most important human barriers that we have is slowly fading away. Technology barriers, the technology is mature nowadays. Of course, there is always more things to explore, items to improve, but the fundament of the SASE architecture is definitely there. Challenges that customer need to overcome are typically related to migrations, right? But that is no difference from any other technology change. You somehow need to evolve from where you are today to where you want to be in the future. And I think that's where specialized partners like Colt, with the help of our service, can play a very important role.
That's a really good point. I was just about to ask you that. Maybe we can expand a little bit on that. Why is it so important to have the right partner, to make sure that this is a successful implementation? As you've already mentioned, a lot of these issues that might be the human element, it's that fear of change, perhaps that risk of change associated with adopting what is a new technology or a different architecture, a new way of thinking about things.
Yeah, of course. When you enter a new era, you need to establish new practices. You need to gain new experience, and as a consumer of this technology, you typically do that only once, right? So it's difficult to actually gain such an experience. After you've done it, then probably you said, yeah, well, I would have done this and this different next time, but you probably don't do it next time anytime soon, at least. So that's where I think the partners such as yourself, Colt, can play a very important role. We have a lot of experience by ourselves, Versa, but we don't scale, right? So if we need to address all those customers ourselves directly, then obviously that's not going to scale, and we don't want that. So that's why, you guys come into play. You have a lot of customer knowledge. You typically deal with those customers already for a long time. You know how they think, how they operate, who to talk to. And I think that combination is very valuable with still the support of the vendor. I think it's a winning strategy to overcome the challenges and to take away the cold water for the customer in order to complete a successful migration towards a SASE architecture.
I agree. I think having the right partnership is so fundamental to a successful SASE implementation, the right technology partner, the right managed service partner, really just to help you at every step of the way on that journey. As we've mentioned before, so often that, we advise our customers that, SASE at the end of the day is a journey. You have to understand where you are today. What is that destination you need to get to? And then a partner can really help tailor a customized journey that takes your individual circumstances into consideration and really help you map out a journey to get to where you need to be in terms of that architecture that encompasses your security and network infrastructure. And of course, to learn from many of the pitfalls that we've seen from some of those early adopters that have gone along the journey to SASE. So that takes me on to the next question, which is very much related, which is what are some of the key successful strategies that you've seen implemented by customers with SASE? What's worked really well?
Yeah. So unfortunately, no customer network is the same, right? They all have a different heritage. So, it's always a bit of a journey to find out, what kind of technology, the technology is often given, but how to actually implement that. In one customer, you need to integrate with this SaaS, the other customer, you need to integrate with that IDP, and those different environments basically create, a unique flavor of every single customer. So the most successful strategies is obviously to keep complexity to the minimum. So to reduce complexity, because complexity is a recipe for disaster. We mentioned in the beginning, unified SASE or single vendor SASE is a great ingredient for simplifying architectures, reducing complexity, and therefore having a more successful strategy. Less integration points with your existing environment. Therefore, less possible, hurdles for failures during the migration, and a much more focused, approach on how to move from A to B. Having a plan in place, executing according to the plan, and that's also, again, we just mentioned the partnership and the role of the partner. Working with some experts that have done that already before is very relevant for executing this strategy. We know it's doable. We have done it many times together, and I think we will still be doing it many times in the future. SASE is there, and let's convince our customers together.
Excellent. I think you touched on so many important points there around having the right plan from the outset. So really understanding, as you say, no two customers are exactly the same. You really have to look at this as a tailored approach, have the right partner that can take you on that journey, that can really understand your unique circumstances, your business, but also evaluate that plan as you go along in the implementation phase. Check those objectives, are they still being met? We always advise customers the importance of doing a proof of concept early on and a pilot deployment to really test the strategies, test the objectives. Is this solution meeting what you actually intended it to meet? And it gives you the opportunity to course correct early on in the deployment rather than roll out and then have to backtrack. So it's really important that you think these things through, you have the right partners that can advise you, people who've gone on this journey before, that can really advise you how to get the best from the technology, because ultimately it's what you do with that technology, how you implement it within your wider ecosystem, that's going to allow you to get the best and the optimal experience for your end users.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up that point on the proof of concept. The proof is in the pudding, right? So let's point it out, and I think that is the best fact check for a possible buyer of this technology. Try it out before you actually buy and see that's a reality. Yeah. Thank you.
And we also see with a lot of customers when we're advising them, they may have an end state architecture that they want to get to, but thinking about this as a journey, thinking about this as a phased approach, it's not necessary, to think about when you're selecting the partner that you want to implement all of the features and functionality, or perhaps all of the components of SASE in one go. The reality is this will be a phased approach, but at least selecting the right partners, the right technology vendors that have got those capabilities that you can then take advantage when you need them, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Okay, then. Looking into the future, what's in store for us in terms of SASE? How do you see this evolving over the next year, the next 12 to 36 months, perhaps?
Yeah. A few, big trends that we see, not even in the future, but starting already today. The first one is, there is a big concern in the market about data sovereignty. So, cloud adoption is, of course, very interesting. It can achieve many business goals, but you never know where your data resides and who has access to this data. So we work a lot with our partners, including, Colt as a service provider, to basically build an infrastructure where we together have much more control on that, right? So we call that sovereign SASE. That means that there is much more protection on where the data resides. It's more in control of us versus that you put it somewhere in the cloud where you never know who has access to that. So that's one of the big things. We also see that SASE will evolve into different flavors of SASE for different types of networks. For example, one of the areas where we are investing heavily on is what we call SASE on SIM. SASE on SIM is basically a SASE solution targeted for mobile users. Using a particular infrastructure, a mobile user can automatically enforce SASE services being identified by its mobile device in a SASE environment, in order to be more protected than without a SASE service. So it will naturally also integrate with the VPN services that customer may have for their mobile devices. And that can be then also extended to OIT or IT devices as well. And last but not least, we discussed it already. AI is going to play an important role, right? More and more use cases will be developed where we take advantage of what AI has to offer to us. So easier access to data, more data to be data mined on, and there will be many new concepts and even products following which are being built with the use of AI techniques. I think those are the three main trends that are going to play an important role today. Luckily, they're an evolution of what we have today, right? So it not necessarily means that we start from scratch on something that you may have already started today, but they evolve from where we start today into something which is, future-proof. Regardless whether you go into one of those trends I just mentioned, or you stick with the trend that we started today. But there is a natural evolution of all those things, and that's what we see happening, and that's also what we hear from our prospects asking us. That's where they like to get the vendor's vision on evolution towards the future.
Excellent. I think there's a few really good points there. I think thinking about regulation and compliance, that's a really big driver for a lot of our customers that's starting to think about the importance of bringing together their networking and security infrastructure. And SASE can really help here, especially when you bring in that core pillar of zero trust network access and some of those zero trust principles that can really help with a lot of the regulations that are coming in that we're seeing across Europe and of course elsewhere outside of Europe. So very, very interesting and very, very topical for our customers. Any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
I think we concluded already on many things. The final thought is really, the market is there. The projects are real. The customers want it, and those customers that do acquire it, they are satisfied with the end result. So it's not a myth anymore. We believe that SASE, and in particular unified SASE, is the next big thing in our industry. It's the first technology that really have security and networking nicely migrated together. And that makes a big change in our industry going forward. So I think we're all excited to be part of that industry, and we hope that we will do a lot of projects together with Colt going forward.
Looking forward to it. Great. Well, thank you, John, for joining us today and sharing your insight and experience with our audience.
Thank you. It was awesome. Thank you for inviting me.